Welcome back to the Midlife Reinvention podcast. If you're in a season of change right now, whether in your career, your health, your identity, or simply in how you are seeing yourself in this stage of life, I think this conversation will really speak to you. My guest today is Deborah Knight. Deborah is an entrepreneur and strategic communications expert who has spent more than 25 years helping leaders, public figures, and brands shape their voice and tell their stories. What I especially appreciate about her story is that alongside that professional success, she's also willing to speak honestly about some of the things many women still navigate quietly: confidence, change, menopause, and what it really means to really come into your own voice and power later in life. So I'm so happy to have you on the show, Deborah. How are you doing?
Great. Great to see you, Kavita.
Yes, it's lovely to talk to you. I know we spoke a little bit earlier, and I was fascinated by your story. You've reinvented yourself many times. When you look back at these different stages in your life, what do you think has kind of kept evolving instead of kind of staying stuck in maybe one identity, right? A lot of people just have the one thing, and that becomes their identity. Have you managed to do that?
Well, Kavita, I think there's so many things that happen to us in the decades of our life, right? If you think back, I think it's often what happens in our 20s, 30s, and 40s that define where we are today as a 50 plus woman. And I think sometimes many of us look at where we are today and sometimes don't appreciate where we came from. And
Hmm.
I believe that that really is the key to understanding the wisdom that you bring to your life throughout the decades. I mean, it really is a building block situation that we're all living in. And I was reading recently about something called life quakes. And the life quake idea is that there are things that happen to us, like a life quake, like something in your life will happen, or there are things you can create, both of which create the underfooting that was once stable
Hmm.
becomes broken up. And if you think about the geology of the earth breaking up right beneath you, what it does is it gives you that instability that you didn't expect.
Hmm.
Sometimes the earth completely changes underneath you, so you have no way to catch your footing initially. You might even fall through and then have to climb out again. And if you
Hmm.
think about your backyard rather than a huge disaster, about how the earth does shift and how nature every spring will create different flowers. I don't know
Yes.
about you, but I try to diligently plant in the fall, but I'm always surprised in the spring what
Yeah.
actually comes up.
Whatever.
And
Yeah.
it's not the way I designed it, whether that's the animals that get to those bulbs, or whether it's the weather that gets to the bulbs, or whether they
Mhm.
just don't sprout. And so I think that what's in between our planning, right? What's in between the planning and the goals that we set for ourselves and the opportunity that lies ahead is the possibility, right? And you and I have spoken about the possibilities that are there for all of us. And I think sometimes in life, particularly in places like big cities in North America where we're always running around and doing things so quickly, we don't stop and pause enough to look at the possibilities in the middle.
Mhm.
And that really was the lesson that I learned because I was always a planner. In my 20s and 30s, I had these goals, I had these plans. And of course, what did they say in life? God laughs when you create plans, right? Because we don't often see them come to fruition no matter how hard we push. And I
Mhm.
don't know if you've ever been in a situation like this where you feel like you're pushing something uphill, like this big, huge rock or this big,
Mhm.
I like to think of the caveman and those big wheels that they're pushing up. And I think that really is how I've often felt. And then one time someone said to me, why push that all the way up?
Yeah.
Why not hike it? enjoy,
Yes.
enjoy the
Take it with
walk.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
Pushing things up doesn't it rarely gets to the point that you want. And
Mm.
that was a really, really hard kind of reconciliation for me. And it wasn't a realization as much as a reconciliation. And the difference is because the realization meant for me that I had to stop and look back and go, oh, well, and have a big sigh. But the reconciliation meant that I accepted it. I really accepted that it's okay not to have those plans turn out the way you expected, and that perhaps those possibilities in the middle should have been what I was paying attention to more.
Mm,
Because sometimes when you pay attention to the possibilities, you literally can grab one of those and say, that's better for me. And then the opportunity presents itself.
mm,
And so that to me was a big awakening because my 20s and 30s, I spent a great deal of time pushing, pushing. And I got to say, unlike a lot of people, I've been an entrepreneur now for 26 years.
mm.
So when you're an entrepreneur, as you may have heard and you may know yourself, you're used to pushing, right? You're
Yes.
used to just going, pushing through. And so therefore, when my identity had to shift
Mm,
completely. So going back to your initial question, what was it that happened? Well, I had a regular full-time 9 to 5 job my whole life. I graduated from university and my parents said, go get a job.
mm, mhm, mhm.
And my parents had jobs that lasted 30 years.
Yeah.
And so I expected I would get a job and hopefully a job in my field. I was studying arts administration at University of Toronto, so I wanted to work in the arts and culture sector. And I was really interested in working with people. And so I got my first jobs based at like as internships and being involved in the arts sector. And I found myself laid off sometime around 1999 when I was working at a big arts and culture center, and it was purchased by an American company who came in and did a clean sweep of everyone that was
Mm.
Canadian who were
Wow.
in management. And I was one of those people.
Mm,
And so that was not something that I was used to experiencing. My father had experienced that in his career. And so the answer my parents had was, we'll just go back out there and get another job.
mm,
And so that's what I tried to do. But my identity all of a sudden was shifting at that moment because I thought, wow, like this is tough. It's tough to get a job like the one I had. So luckily for me, I had some friends around me who said, why don't you try to get some contracts, see what happens? And then maybe from those contracts, you'll land a full-time job. And so this was 25 years ago. There were
mm,
not very many contracts. Like contract work really wasn't as popular as it is today. So I needed to make a living and I was single and I had no kids and I was living downtown and living the Sex and the City lifestyle. So I needed to make money, right?
yeah.
So what I did was I talked to all the people I knew that were doing fractional contract work, they call it now,
Yeah.
and said, how do I get into this? And so one of my friends had a film company and he said, well, we have a table at the front. It used to be designed as a reception area, but why don't you just use it as a desk? And when our clients come in, we'll introduce you. And maybe if you get some clients, you can introduce them. And this was a time when film, TV was not only popular as an art form, but websites were being built and videos were being
Yes.
produced.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that all fell into the area of marketing communications, which is what I was studying. So I just hung out there and I just talked to people. And sure enough, I got my first client from word of mouth. And then I just never looked back. But I got to tell you, like in those first few years, I hired people, I had interns working with me. I still wasn't making a lot of money. It was
Mm,
really difficult, right? I was kind of living, as they say, paycheck to paycheck. And then throughout the first decade, they say like the first 5 years is really tough, right? And it really was. But once I made that time work for me past 5 years, then it was easier because then people know who you are and what you're doing. I didn't want to go back to full-time work until I knew that it was something that interests me.
mm,
And so through the last 25 years, there were jobs that interest me. And I did go back to some full-time work.
mm.
One time in particular where my son was a baby. But you know what, Kavita, it only lasted a couple of years because I'm not a round peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
When
Yes.
I was when I was a university student, I remember one of my mentors at university for a summer job said I was a square peg. Holes were all round.
Yeah.
And she kind of foresaw this happening when I was a university student, that really the corporate life wasn't for me. And so
Mm,
here's a part that I didn't listen to that because I so wanted to fit in.
mm,
I so wanted that. I thought, well, if everybody else can fit in, so can I. But then she said something to me which always stuck with me. Do you want to be beige or do you want to be colorful? Something like that. And so her viewpoint was, yeah, that the corporate sector for someone like me was very beige, and that
yeah.
it really wasn't me. And that I came into a room when wearing purple, like you're wearing today, or
Yeah.
fuchsia,
Yeah.
and that was interesting to me, but I didn't really grasp it.
Yeah.
And until I became around an older person, I
Mm,
would say around 50, right? When I went,
mm.
oh, yeah, like, yeah, it's okay to be fuchsia pink and purple. I don't have to be beige. No, because
Yeah.
I so wanted to fit in.
Yes.
I so wanted what I thought was security, right?
Mm,
Job security. I wanted a regular paycheck. I wanted to like buy a
mm,
house. I wanted all those things that I thought full-time work was going to give me.
mm-hmm,
But in fact, it's not all those things that give it to you. It's what you create yourself.
mm, mm-hmm,
As a single woman, I bought my first house as an entrepreneur, and I've bought four houses since,
mm,
all as a single income earner. And I did get married twice in my life, but both times I was the breadwinner in the relationship. My
mm-hmm,
husband's, the
mm-hmm,
first one and the second, did not have money, did not have real estate. I was the one that made all of that happen.
mm-hmm.
And so I was really proud of myself that I was able to do that as
Yeah.
an entrepreneur. And so that shattered my belief right there that I couldn't do that. So I
Yes.
think that what I noticed, at least for me, is I had all these beliefs lined up. I
Yeah.
had to get married young. I had to buy a house with a husband. I had to have a child. I had to have a full-time job. And when none of those things happened for me, and I was still single and childless at 40,
Mm.
I went, oh, okay. This
Okay.
really is something that I'm creating, and see where this goes. Between 40 and 50 was when I had a child and got married, which is actually very unusual, I have learned.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Wow. Amazing. So there's so much there, Deborah. So I love, firstly, and yes, you should be very proud of yourself as an entrepreneur and all the other things that you've done, because that's one of the key things, as I always say, is be proud of what you've created, where you are now. Don't ever regret anything that you've done, because it's all a building block for where you're going, right?
Right,
But I love
right.
that. I love it because that's what you started with. I love that life quake thing. That's really awesome, because you think about it that way, everything, there may be some quakes, but it all turns out after, like it all rebuilds some way. It could rebuild in a completely different way, or it could just be a slight quake, right? And I love that. And I do believe that what you described about the in between, the possibilities are in the in between phase, because when we have those quakes, often we try to just go to the next thing without really planning or figuring it out. Or in your case, how you got laid off and you were like, hey, I'm gonna just do this. And you sat in an office and you created the possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And I think that
Mhm.
that just those are some of the things that what you said really resonated, because if you don't want to be beige, you don't have to be. Like, you
Right.
can be colorful, right? And it's
Yeah.
really up to you to create yourself, to be create your own kind of colorful life the way you want it. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That insight is really, really powerful. And so, like, let's talk about that. You said that you, after 40, you're looking and like, I didn't fit all the expectations of what I was expected to do. And just along that line, women, let's say, who are in the 45, 50 range or higher, or older, they have so much wisdom and they have so much possibility in front of them. Yet there's still that often that hesitation. And I've seen it. I see it all the time. I'm sure you've seen it with either people you work with or your colleagues or your friends. And why do you think that happens? Like, why do we as women hesitate? And how do we help women trust themselves again to move forward? That's a big question, but
It is a really good question. And of course, I think women of a certain age, when we hit 50, a number of things are happening. We can't help ourselves but to look back,
mm,
right? Because our society has said, this is a big birthday, you must look back.
mm,
And that's not easy for a lot of people to do.
mm,
And why it's not easy is because, like you mentioned earlier, there's the problem of regret, there's the problem of what do I do now? And there's the problem of what do I want now?
mm,
And I think that it's all right for us to question all those things.
mm,
I tend to not look back and regret because I can't change what has happened.
right.
And I really, really have lived by that for a very long time because if you look back and regret, it causes a lot of pain and opens up some old wounds and traumatic events that you may not be able to reconcile with when you get older because it's not the person you are today.
Mm,
And so I tend to look in the past and go, that was interesting that that happened, but I'm not that person anymore.
mm,
I feel now I'm a different person than I once was. And so maybe what served me in the past, perhaps it's not going to serve me moving forward. And so keeping that in mind, what is it that I really want to do? It comes out of the idea that it's okay to play around with things and fail, right? And so I
mm,
think if you think about the culture that we're living in, women, like many people say, well, if I fail, what does that say about me?
mm,
Right?
mm,
And so the idea that you fail forward sometimes needs to be remembered that that is the only way to learn and that's the only way to progress. Yeah, I failed at a lot of different things that I've attempted to do,
mm.
but they've taught me something along the way. One of those things was going back into the corporate world and then realizing that this is not going to work either. I
Yes.
got laid off multiple times in my life
Yes.
for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And so if you know that people who get laid off, there's a couple of sayings that they use, right? People say, I got laid off and I got the next job that came was a better job than the one before.
Hmm.
One
Hmm.
window opens, the other one closes. The idea that the best people get let go because they're the creative ones or they're the smart ones is not something we say out loud, but often that's what happens to people.
Mm, hmm.
And so when you have an event like that, that can change your perspective. Or you get to a point in your life where you say, I just can't handle this corporate job. I just want to retire. And all of a sudden you're left with this opening in your schedule that you finally did take the retirement, but then there's things you want to do and you don't know where to start. I believe women have to say to themselves, it's okay to fail. It's okay to chase my passions. It's okay to even rest and dream about what I want to do because we don't give ourselves time.
Hmm.
I just met a woman recently in a mastermind group that I'm working on where I'm facilitating 8 women in transition right now. And she took a year and a half to just figure out what she wanted to do.
Mm.
Now, that may sound like an enormous amount of time for people, but she needed that. She
Yeah.
really, really needed to do that. And now she's living her best life and doing what she really wanted to do, but took the time to really figure that out. Now, if financially speaking, people can't take that kind of time and not work and there's that financial pressure, then that's gonna add an enormous amount of pressure there as well.
Mm,
And I understand that and I've been through that. And in that case, I would say small steps.
hmm.
Every week, if you can just schedule small steps in your calendar that say, today I'm going to,
Hmm.
I don't know, do that thing that you wanted to do, research that thing you wanted to research.
Mm,
And I think that if we make time for it, that possibility will
hmm.
present itself a little more clearly.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you spoke about a lot of things and that this hesitation and it all comes down to fear, right? And fear of failure, fear of insecurity of what's going to happen. Or, but I love what you said is that don't look back and regret, and it's okay to fail forward because that's the only way we learn and grow. And I think that's one of the main messages is that if a woman is hesitating to do what she really wants, take the time, like the woman that you described in the mastermind, take your time to figure it out because it is the time that you need for yourself, and we don't give ourselves that time often. And when you are able to figure out what is it you really want, who are you really, what do you really want, then you get the confidence and then you can move forward and take those steps. So yeah, I think it is really about facing your fears, right? And that's the big question is how do we do that? Because there's so many fears that we have, especially as we go older, right? And how did you become more confident? Like after 50 or when you turn 50, like what happened there where it's like, what changed for you at that stage? I know what changed for me is like, well, if I'm not going to do this now, when am I going to do it? Right. But tell me a little bit about your experience when you, I guess, turned 50 or in the later stage that you're just like, I'm just going to do this. Like, how did that happen?
So at the age of 42, I gave birth to my son and I was not married. I was dating a guy who wasn't interested in having children, and he was 7 years younger than me. So we broke up when I told him I was pregnant. And at
Mm,
42, I wasn't sure that this was the right path with me being potentially a single mom.
mm-hmm,
So I decided at that point, well, I'm keeping the baby. I'm 42. The chances of me getting pregnant again are minuscule. My son was 0.07 chance of being born as a miracle baby. So that was, and he was healthy, and that was going to be the situation I faced my at the moment. But I had my girlfriends around me, and I said, okay, well, we're going to raise this baby together, me and my girlfriends.
that's great. I love that.
Right? And
Yeah.
my girlfriends, like some of them were married, some of them are single. We're like, yeah, we're going to raise this baby. And so at that point, because it was a situation that I had no choice that presented to me, all of a sudden you go, well, this guy I'm dating doesn't want a baby. He wanted the relationship, but didn't want a baby. Okay, fine. Well, as you can well imagine, it took a bit of time to sort of figure out how I was going to handle that because
Mm-hmm,
that's not the norm, right? Usually you tell your partner you're pregnant and everybody's happy and they live happily ever after, right?
mm-hmm,
And so that was also very embarrassing that I couldn't tell people that because everyone
mm-hmm,
wanted to know, well, what did he say?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
The answer was, let's break up,
mm,
which is not what people wanted to hear. And people then thought I could convince them and all the rest of it. Well,
yeah.
fast forward a few years, we broke up, we got back together, then we got married. Our marriage lasted 3 years. His parents both died tragically 3 months apart. He
Oh,
became an alcoholic. Financially, he couldn't work. Sorry, he couldn't work, and financially, we were destroyed. I became depressed because I was married now to an alcoholic. He had anger problems. He never hit me, but he hit the wall. I had to kick him out. I kicked him out. He went to his brother's. His brother brought him back. I had to call the police. My neighbors who said they would help all turned their back on me,
oh my God, Deborah.
help me and
Okay.
my son,
Wow.
help with him, but they all turned their back on me
Yeah.
because they were all embarrassed. We lived in a nice neighborhood. They all thought he was embarrassing. Usually he came around and he was drunk. He got picked up off park benches by police. Police were constantly coming to my house, depositing him back to my house. I sent him to rehab. He escaped rehab. I sent him to the hospital. He walked out of the hospital. It was an ongoing issue. I then promptly gave my clients their money back on the advice of an entrepreneur and lawyer whom I knew, who
Mm,
said, tell everybody you're not in any shape to do this. And you'll call them in the future, or they can go hire a competitor, but you just really can't do this right now.
wow.
I was forced to sell my house because I had no money. I gave my ex first and last month's rent. I found him an apartment. I put his stuff in a van because he was drunk for the day that he was supposed to be moving. I called his brother, begged for him to help me. He came along, we got him into an apartment, and I shut the door and said, that's it. We are totally done. Goodbye. I was now a single mother with no house, no income. Well, I had a house, but I had to sell it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
had to sell it. And I gave, like I said, you have to give your ex some money to survive. And so by that time, I'm around 46.
Mm,
I have a 5-year-old son. My parents are elderly. And my parents were there to help, but they weren't there to help financially, that's for sure. And so I just said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shut this door and I'm going to walk away because this house is not my home. It's just a house. I'm going to create something new for myself and I'm getting out of this neighborhood because ironically, the women that said that they'd be there for me all were not. I
Mm,
needed to get out of this neighborhood because I felt that sometimes people talk that they're going to, they talk and say
mm.
they're going to help people when it comes down like I needed
Yes,
help with I needed help with like little things like can you watch
sure.
my son for a couple hours?
Of course.
Like little
Yes.
things like that. And
Yeah,
nobody
yeah.
was willing to help me. So that was really a wake-up call. And I suppose all of that happening together was a wake-up call. And so when I then found myself moving to another neighborhood, just me and my son, that's when something like that really shakes you to the core because at
Of
that
course.
point I didn't have that business that I built anymore. It had completely collapsed because I was depressed. I couldn't actually work properly. So that was a big change in my 40s when I should have
Mm,
been earning lots of money and establishing myself. Everything fell apart. Then after that, that's what got me really strong to say, well, this is what I'm
mm.
now dealt with. How am I going
Yes.
to survive? Right. And so at that point, somehow I just kept going. So then when I turned 50, so when I turned 50, I was still working on my own and I met another man who became the love of my life.
Mm,
Edward is his name, who worked in the same building as me.
mm,
And he had a business and I had a business. And so at the age of 50, I was 50, he was 54. I fell in love again and we became a
beautiful.
couple
Mm,
within a year of meeting. And so things changed
mm,
rapidly after
mm.
that. And because
Wow.
he was also an entrepreneur, he really understood what I had been going through, and his business
Hmm.
was pretty successful. So we together kept our two businesses going.
Mm, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's probably hard to talk about all the things, the highs and and the very lows and I'm sorry you went through that and but I also think that it's such a amazing lesson to anyone listening is like you can be in those real lows that you just described, Deborah, but it's about you and your resilience and about how do you look at it. It's like, okay, here I am. I think you said something about I'm going to shut this door and walk away and create a new doorway, I guess. And it's not easy. I'm not making it sound like it's all roses. It's not. It's very hard. But I think when you are able to have that belief, I guess, in yourself that you can do this, then doors open and possibilities arise and the love of your life enters or old clients reemerge
Yeah.
and it's not, it's about that energy, right? That positive energy that gets created when you actually believe that, despite everything that happened to me, I'm capable and I'm able to do this. And
And today, Kavita, my ex is homeless and he
oh my
lives in a
goodness.
men's shelter and he's in a rehab facility. So it never got better.
Mm,
So I just want you to know that, like people might say, well, who are these homeless guys out there? Well, my ex-husband's one of them
mm,
because he never got himself together. And for years, I tried to help him financially. I tried to help him with whatever resources I had to help
yes.
him not be homeless. And I even prevented him from being homeless and gave him the money that he had to pay me
Mm-hmm.
as support, gave it back to him. And he still ended up being homeless.
Mm,
So I think that you have to say, don't let this bring you down. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned is I had to try not to let him bring me down
mm-hmm.
because he was not going to get any better.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. I think maybe if I just maybe we kind of switch a little bit in terms of topics, and you're writing a book now, I believe, called Menopause Speaks, and I think it was inspired by your own journey through cancer and
Yeah.
menopause. And so tell us a little bit about how that interest became and why is this, as I said in my introduction, you said, why aren't we talking about all this? And why is it such a taboo topic? And maybe there's also something called surgical menopause
Yeah.
that you talk about in the book. So just maybe a little bit about
Yeah.
this
So,
whole topic of that we go through as everybody, all us women, and why aren't we talking about it?
right, exactly.
Mm-hmm,
Well, lately people have been talking more about it, which is fantastic.
mm-hmm,
But the downside of people talking about menopause the way they are today is that there is such a great amount of information out there. We don't even know if some of it is real.
mm,
The misinformation is enormous. And so Menopause Speaks came out of my own questioning what is actually happening here and who are the experts and why aren't I meeting them? I'm also a patient advocate and a spokesperson for Mount Sinai Hospital for Mature Women's Health. So we can actually start to shatter the misconceptions and the taboo topic that menopause sometimes is to
mm-hmm.
try and give women the information that they need. So Menopause Speaks came out of this idea that if we don't talk about this stuff, we're never going to help each other. And because women are great at helping each other if they'll only open their mouths and talk about it, many of us just keep it all inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was diagnosed with uterine cancer, and endometrial cancer is what it's technically called, in my uterus, I had no idea what was going on.
Mm.
I thought that I was having a period and it was what they say the last hurrah when you're in menopause, you're having a
Yeah.
period. I was 54 years old
Mm.
and I was still having a regular period. So I thought. What I learned was that nobody understood why I was still having a period. My hormones were in check, they were high, estrogen levels were high. I started to have bleeding that was unexplained. And still, I went for many tests and no one told me that this was abnormal. So
Mm.
it took me about 2 years to figure out that I had cancer. And then when
What?
I had it,
Really? Wow.
yeah, when I had found out about the cancer, I was in shock.
Mm.
And what I needed to, luckily, it was caught early.
Mm-hmm.
It was in stage one still.
Yeah.
So the recommendation was a radical hysterectomy. And when you are still having periods and you have a radical hysterectomy, which means you take out every organ, not just the one that has cancer, that's the recommendation in Canada because cancer can spread. If you just take out the one organ, you don't know what else is there.
Right. Right.
You go
Right.
into something called surmeno, which is surgical menopause. And that is the stage where your hormones are completely drained. They're gone with the removal of your ovaries. So you're no longer making estrogen, testosterone, or progesterone.
Mm.
When you're no longer making those things, women then have to put it back in their body.
Yes.
And so that's where hormone therapy comes in. And
Mm.
so people in surgical menopause have a unique situation that they're not creating any hormones at all. The stage of menopause that we're talking about with regular women is when women stop having periods and then their hormone levels very gradually start to drop so that
Yes.
you're able to adjust to all the different things that happen during menopause. And I think there's like 35 different symptoms of menopause. So
Mm-hmm.
menopause is defined as when you stop bleeding after 1 year. And then those things may have been happening during your stage of perimenopause, but they will continue throughout your entire life. There is no such thing as just going through menopause. We are in menopause for the rest of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had the problem that I had, that cancer then created surgical menopause, it then made me feel like an entirely different person.
Mm-hmm.
I had lost my ability to have emotions. I lost my ability to even have awareness physically of what was happening around me. I had peripheral vision, but I couldn't feel anyone behind me coming up. All of these sort of senses that you take for granted all started to go
Oh,
away.
really? Wow.
And so you start to feel physically very, very different.
Mm.
And not having the ability, Kavita, to even cry or process emotions the way I used to made me realize that I was like I felt alone in this, but I couldn't be. There must be lots of other women going through this. But I quickly recognized that menopause is not defined by surgical versus regular menopause. It was
Mm.
just menopause. So
Yes.
that's when I started to like do the research. Well, what if we told women what was going to happen? And then I started to quickly realize people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s were getting surgical menopause because endometriosis was on the rise.
Yes. Yes.
And people were having this happen in childbearing years. And it was really, really difficult because when you get launched into menopause, no one tells you about
Mm-hmm.
all the things that can happen to your brain health, your heart health, your brain, your bones.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conversation really began of me interviewing women, finding out what we weren't talking about, like sexual relations,
Yes.
what was happening with our bodies, what was happening in our relationships with men. And then
Yes.
also talking to women who believed they didn't have any symptoms at all, but they just didn't feel right. Like this
Yes.
the whole understanding that it's
Yeah.
okay, you may not have all 35 symptoms, but some of those symptoms that
Still.
could be there that you're not even
Yeah.
recognizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it began as a project of providing the right information and
Mm.
using my experience of talking to many, many doctors and being told the wrong information. And I had to keep going.
Mm.
I had to keep going and going and going until I found the right information. And I got to tell you, if I hadn't done that, my cancer would not have been found because
Mm.
every doctor said I was all right until I found the one doctor who said I wasn't all right.
It's so important to get the right information. And then it's kind of a through line I'm seeing in your whole life is that you kept going to find the right information and to get the answers and to talk about it. And I think that's so important. Anything that we're experiencing as women, if we're going through it, like if nobody knows it, it's such misinformation around there. We must bring that forward, and it's really important to speak about it. And so I love the name of your book, Menopause Speaks. It's and the awareness that you're bringing to it.
And so, with my work as a volunteer with Mount Sinai Hospital and the Mature Women's Health Initiative, I've really, really come to realize that every woman is individual. We cannot just treat menopause in one big way with all and say, oh, because you're in menopause, these are the things that you need to deal with.
Yes,
Every woman needs to see a doctor where they can talk about their individual care.
yes, yes,
And one idea does not fit all.
yeah. So
And
important.
so, yeah,
Mm-hmm,
and it's
mm-hmm,
really, especially when you've had cancer, and there's also myths around cancer and
mm-hmm,
HRT and
mm-hmm,
menopause that
mm-hmm.
also need to be broken down.
Yes,
And so that, without going into all those details, that's what
yeah,
we're hoping to
yes.
do is just get women to
Well,
ask those
what a
questions.
fantastic initiative, and that's amazing. So that's congratulations for being a part of that. But that was fantastic. I mean, such a wide-ranging conversation we've had, Deborah, as I knew we would, and ranging from menopause to relationships to career and all the things that we go through as women. So I really, really appreciate you sharing your expertise and your life story and with such vulnerability as well.
I think that the reinvention began where I said, okay, now I'm like around 25 years in this business. What is it that I really want to do that I enjoy doing? And I think that by looking at the world of social media and marketing and looking at how people communicate in general and the rise of AI, my business has transformed quite a bit and will continue to transform quite a bit. And I would say it's scary but exhilarating at the same time. And I do tell people I've gone up a million and down a million in my business.
Yes,
That's just part of it. Like I
yes,
told you, I bought four houses, but I also went up a million and down a million. And I
yes,
mean down like a debt of a million, then up again. But I mean the point is that when I look at what I've done, and I look at the income I've made and the impact I've made on my clients and the continual consulting work that I do that helps people, it makes me encouraged that I can continue to pivot in all sorts of circumstances.
mm,
And I have to say, with the women that I've met that are over 50, they're actually coming up with the most exciting ideas for how they want to live their life.
yes,
And it is really incredible because women now are saying a lot of things like, I'm not interested in that anymore, or I don't want to pay attention to that anymore, or it doesn't make me happy anymore.
yes.
And it is a common thing that I'm hearing a lot of.
Me too.
And
Yes.
I think there's like some calmness in that, that I think many of us are feeling like we understand where we've been, we feel confident in who we are, and now we just don't care about some of the things that we used to care about.
Mm,
Like I hear one thing I hear a lot of. So my women friends who are fashionistas, for example, they're not that interested in spending all of their money and time on fashion anymore. They're more interested in
yeah.
experiences,
Yes. Yes. It's about resilience. It's about
you
pivoting.
know?
It's about adaptation, like you were mentioned AI, and it's about understanding what you really want and not really caring about, well, not, I mean, not worrying about the
Yeah, what other people,
expectations, right? And
yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself, but I think from this whole conversation, I just think this line is kind of maybe it encompasses you is that just keep going.
Just keep
Would that be
going.
right? Just keep going.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, do you ever watch Mel Robbins sometimes on her podcast? And she says the best time to start is just right now.
Yes,
The best time,
exactly.
just
And we'll,
start.
yeah,
Just
and
do
then,
it. Keep
yeah, mic
going, you
drop
know?
there. Just mic drop there. I think that's where we'll leave it because that's the most important, one of the most
Yeah,
important messages, just to keep
it is the
going.
most
So,
important message. Just start. The best time to start is today for
yes,
everything. And
yes,
yesterday, the best time to start was today.
yesterday.
And yesterday, I
Yes,
mean, I think
yes.
that we think that if we haven't done it, we've lost the thread or we've missed the boat or all of those expressions. One of the things I never say is I'm too old for that.
Oh, please. Yes,
I never say that. And if
yeah.
I hear that, I cringe and I go, too old for what?
For
Like,
what?
really?
Yes,
Don't say
I love
that
it.
in your
I love
head,
it.
even.
We could talk for a long time. I really appreciate this conversation,
Yeah.
Deborah. But thank you so much. I really appreciate all that you've shared.
Thank you, Evita.